Okay, so first of all, I want to show you a typical commission structure, and then I'll show you what's changing. So, you have a seller and you have a buyer, and typically the seller has an agent and the buyer has an agent. Each of those agents gets a commission. Now, where does that commission come from? The commission is a percentage of the purchase price that's paid directly to the seller's agent, also known as a listing agent. In this example, let's say that it's 5%. So the entire 5% is paid from the seller to the seller's agent. And the seller's agent then splits that 5% and gives a portion of it to the buyer's agent. In this example, let's say it's an even split, so 2.5%. So they each get half, 2.5% and 2.5%. And that commission is negotiable. It can be anything. And that's always been the case. However, it's become industry practice to advertise the buyer's agent's commission on the MLS. So, for example, let me bring up a listing on the MLS. Here you see a listing, and right here is the commission that is offered to the buyer's agent. This one is 2.5%. So this number is a percentage. And what's important to understand is that this number on the MLS has been pre-negotiated between the seller and the seller's agent. That means they agreed upon a commission in their listing contract. So, real quick, I just want to show you, here is a listing contract. Obviously, the buyer side does not see this. So, right here is where you enter the commission. This is the entire amount, say 5%. And so this charges the seller. And down here, this is what is given to the buyer's agent. So we're taking from that 5%, which is the entire amount. I want to be clear. The buyer's agent's commission is taken from the seller's agent's commission. And that's the figure offered on the MLS to buyer's agents. So again, here is the MLS and the commissions. So this is what the lawsuit was about. Some people thought this was price fixing. I won't get into that. Commissions have always been negotiable. But what all this means is when the settlement goes into effect in August of this year, 2024, you won't see commission offerings in the MLS to buyer's agents anymore. Buyer's agents will have to negotiate their own commission with their own clients, the buyers. So usually, up until now, a buyer's agent wouldn't have their buyer sign a buyer's representation agreement until they have an offer ready to go. With the settlement taking effect in August, every buyer's agent is now going to have to require their buyer clients to sign a buyer representation agreement up front with them. And that agreement stipulates the commission that the buyer's agent will be paid. Here's the problem, is that these two contracts cannot talk to each other. The listing contract and the buyer's representation agreement. Those are all those both those contracts are, just think of them as internal contracts within the seller's side and within the buyer's side. Each client, the buyers and the sellers, they each have their own agent and they each have their own contracts. And if the commissions don't match what these two contracts say the commission's going to be, then there's a problem. There's going to be a difference. And that difference is a question as to where that commission is going to come from. For example, if the buyer's agent has an agreement with the buyer for a higher commission than the seller is willing to pay, then that buyer might end up having to pay the commission out of their own pocket. So just to bring this full circle, let's look at a purchase contract. I think it helps to see it. Say a buyer's ready to put in an offer. When August comes around, one of the first things that a buyer's agent is going to do is call up the listing agent and ask, what is the commission? Now, it could be anything. Remember, the seller's agent usually offers a portion to the buyer's agent. But if the seller says, well, I don't want to offer anything to the buyer's side, so 0% to the buyer's agent, what happens then? Well, in the purchase contract, there is this box which says, seller offers to pay the obligation of buyer to buyer's broker under a separate agreement. And in that separate agreement, you can fine-tune what that would be. And so this is where it becomes a negotiating tool. Also, there's this section. You can write in additional financing terms. So say the seller decides to throw in a flat fee. They can do that too. Or the seller could offer a seller concession, like throwing in some cash to help the buyer out with closing costs. So ultimately, if the buyer does end up having to pay a portion of the commission to their own agent, the seller can help offset that. But I think ultimately, for the most part, the commission structure will stay the same. It'll just become a bigger part of the negotiating process, which, it's not classy to have to use commission as a negotiating tool. But I do think sellers should continue to offer buyers' agents commissions in their listing contracts, just to make the whole process more symmetrical. I think it will help increase exposure to a listing. It'll give buyers more confidence, and ultimately it'll create a negotiating process that's more focused on the essential elements. So that's it for this video. I hope that helped, and I will see you in the next one.